The first sign wasn't the cold. It was how often we talked about food. We were stationed deep in the northern forest, far beyond the last permanent town. Officially, we were a seasonal wildlife survey team. Unofficially, we were cheap labor sent to monitor land no one wanted to admit still scared them. There were 7 of us. Enough supplies for 3 months. Winter arrived in 6 weeks. That wasn't normal. The snow came down heavy and wet at first, bending trees instead of snapping them. Then the temperature dropped so fast, the forest seemed to freeze mid-movement. Branches stayed curved. Footprints stayed sharp for days. We told ourselves it would pass. It didn't. The radio went first. No storm damage. No warning. Just silence, like someone had leaned over the world and turned the volume knob down. After that, time started behaving strangely. Days felt too short. Nights felt endless. Hunger arrived early, sharp and unreasonable, even when we were still eating full meals. I remember finishing dinner one night and feeling worse than before I'd eaten. Empty. Not stomach empty. Inside empty. That was when the dreams began. Every night I dreamed of walking through the forest while snow fell upward, lifting off the ground like ash. I could smell meat somewhere ahead of me. Cooked. Warm. Close enough to make my mouth fill with saliva. But I never saw it. I always woke up chewing. The others were changing too. One man, Eric, started losing weight fast. Too fast. His clothes hung loose. His face pulled tight over bone. But he never complained about the cold. Never asked for extra rations. Sometimes I caught him watching us eat with an expression that made my skin crawl. Not envy, calculation. The first animal carcass appeared near camp on the 15th day of isolation. A deer, picked clean. No tracks leading in. No tracks leading out. The bones were cracked open, split carefully, like whoever did it knew exactly where the marrow was thickest. That night, the forest stayed silent. No wind, no animals, just the sound of our breathing, and something else. Something pacing the tree line slowly, patiently, like it was waiting for us to decide something. That was the night I realized the hunger wasn't ours anymore. It was listening. By the 3rd week, the cold stopped being the worst part. Cold is honest. It hurts. Then it kills you. Hunger lies. We cut rations, even though the math said we didn't need to yet. No one argued. That was the frightening part. The suggestion came out of one mouth, and every head nodded like we'd been waiting for permission. The forest felt closer after that. Not physically, emotionally. Sounds carried farther. Shadows lingered longer between trees. Sometimes I thought I heard footsteps matching mine when I went out to check the perimeter. But when I stopped, they kept going. Slow, deliberate. Eric stopped sleeping in the main cabin. He said the snoring bothered him. No one believed that, but no one pushed him either. At night, I started hearing whispers just beneath the crackle of the stove. Not words at first, just the rhythm of speech, like someone murmuring on the other side of a wall. Then it began using my voice. Soft, reasonable. You're thinking clearly, you understand numbers. You know how long food lasts. I would clamp my hands over my ears, but the voice didn't fade. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the place hunger lives. One morning, we found the supply locker open. No forced entry. No mess. Just one crate missing. Eric was sitting outside in the snow, steam rising faintly from his mouth, even though he wasn't breathing hard. "Did you hear something last night?" he asked me. His eyes were too bright, too alert. I asked him where the crate went. He smiled, like the question amused him. "Used," he said. "Efficiently." That night, someone screamed. Not from pain, from realization. We ran outside with flashlights and found Megan standing barefoot in the snow, staring into the trees. Her lips were blue, but her eyes were wide and shining with terror. "It keeps telling me I'm wasting myself," she said. "It says I'm inefficient." I pulled her back inside. As we crossed the threshold, I smelled something that made my stomach twist. Meat, fresh, cooking. Eric was standing by the stove. He didn't look at us. He didn't need to, because the hunger in the room surged all at once, sharp and sudden, like a shared thought. No one ate that night, but none of us slept either, and deep in the forest, something learned all our names. The thing about starvation is that it rewrites your morals quietly. No dramatic breaking point. No sudden collapse into madness. Just a series of small adjustments that feel practical when you make them, and monstrous when you remember them later. By the time we started locking our doors at night, it already knew it had time. Eric began speaking less, but when he did, everyone listened. His words carried a strange weight, like they'd already been agreed upon before he said them. Movement wastes calories, he told us. Talking does too. So we stopped pacing. We stopped arguing. We stopped telling jokes. Megan cried one night, whispering that she was so hungry she could taste blood. Eric knelt beside her, calm and patient. "That means you're close to understanding," he said. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I looked away. The dreams changed after that. I dreamed I was standing in front of a long wooden table, stretching far into darkness. Plates were laid out neatly. Each plate held a name instead of food. Some names were crossed out. Some weren't. When I woke, my mouth was full of saliva, and my stomach ached with longing so deep it felt emotional. The forest pressed closer. Trees leaned in strange ways, their branches twisting together like fingers. Snow drifted upward at night, lifting in thin spirals instead of falling. Once, I saw a figure standing between the trunks, tall, impossibly thin, its limbs bent wrong, but when I blinked, it was just shadow and snow. Just... Eric no longer cast a full shadow in the lantern light. That was when we found the bones. Small ones, crushed and scraped clean behind the storage shed. Not animal. Human. Megan collapsed when she saw them. No one asked where they came from. We all knew. That night, Eric finally spoke the word we'd been avoiding. Wendigo, he said, like he was naming a weather pattern. It isn't a monster. It's a correction. It appears when hunger goes unresolved. I told him to stop. He smiled gently. You're still thinking like prey, he said. That will pass. I realized then that the Wendigo wasn't outside the camp. It was sitting with us, learning who would break first. And it was very interested in me. Eric said it should be democratic. That was his word. Democratic. As if what he was suggesting belonged in the same world as reason and order. We sat around the table with the lantern turned low. Shadows crawled along the walls, stretching us into thin, starving versions of ourselves. Outside, the forest creaked and sighed, like it was breathing through frozen lungs. "We're not going to make it like this," Eric said calmly. "You all know that. No one disagreed. Our ration math had collapsed. The cold was burning more calories than we could replace. Rescue wasn't coming. The radio was still dead. We need to reduce consumption," he continued. "Permanently." Megan started shaking. Someone else whispered, "No." Eric didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The hunger in the room leaned forward. "We draw lots," he said. "No violence, no panic, just necessity." That was when I realized the Wendigo had learned something important. Humans will do terrible things if they believe the rules are fair. I stood up. "This isn't survival," I said. "This is surrender." Eric finally looked at me directly. His eyes were black now. "Not dark, empty. Surrender is inefficient," he replied. "This is adaptation." The lantern flickered. For just a second, I saw him as he truly was, taller than before, shoulders bent forward like something pulling at his spine, jaw stretched too far, teeth showing through split lips. Then the light steadied. He was Eric again. Almost. Megan bolted for the door. She didn't make it 3 steps before something outside screamed her name in her own voice. She froze. That was all it took. Later, when the vote was over, only 4 of us remained at the table. No one spoke. No one cried. The hunger had been fed, not with flesh yet, but with agreement, and agreement, I would learn, was the Wendigo's favorite meal. Morning didn't come the next day. The sky lightened, technically, but the sun never showed. It was like the world had decided we didn't deserve shadows anymore. No one said Megan's name, not once. Her bunk was empty. Her boots were gone. The door showed no signs of struggle, no tracks leading away. Just smooth snow, unbroken like she'd never existed. Eric called it efficiency. "We don't waste," he said. "We don't mourn. Both burn calories." Something had changed in the others. Their eyes followed him now. Their bodies leaned toward him when he spoke, the way plants bend toward light. I realized with a cold, sinking dread that the Wendigo wasn't just wearing Eric, it was teaching through him. That afternoon, hunger became pain, sharp, gnawing, personal. It felt like something inside me was chewing. We gathered again near the stove when the smell started. Not cooking, processing, metal against bone, slow, careful. I didn't look. I couldn't. But my body reacted anyway, mouth watering, hands trembling, heart racing with shameful anticipation. The hunger didn't care where the meat came from. It never had. That was the moment I understood the final trick. The Wendigo doesn't force cannibalism. It makes it feel reasonable. Eric placed portions on tin plates, clean cuts, equal sizes. No ceremony. "This is how we live," he said. I pushed my plate away. "I won't," I whispered. Eric tilted his head, curious. "You already have," he said gently. "Every time you stayed silent, every time you agreed without speaking, the others ate, not fast, not desperate, thoughtful, reverent. Their eyes closed as they chewed like they were praying. I ran outside and vomited into the snow, my body rejecting what my mind was still tempted by. When I looked up, I saw something watching me from the trees, tall, starved, its ribs stretched tight beneath grey skin, legs too long, joints bent wrong. Antlers rose from its skull like dead branches. Its face wasn't monstrous. It was hungry, and when it smiled, I saw my own teeth in its mouth. "You're next," it said, not aloud, but directly into the hollow place inside me. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned, because the only way to beat hunger is to make it starve. I stopped eating, not dramatically, not as a protest. I just didn't. The Wendigo had taught us that hunger was a resource, something to be measured, managed, optimized. If that was true, then it had one weakness it didn't expect: waste. I drank water, melted snow, kept my body barely functional. Every ache, every tremor, every dizzy spell, I let it happen. I welcomed it, Eric noticed on the second day. "You'll die," he said, almost kindly. "Maybe," I replied, "but you'll feel it first." That confused him. Confusion was rare now, dangerous. The others were changing fast. Their skin looked tight, like it didn't quite fit anymore. Their movements were jerky, efficient, stripped of hesitation. They spoke less, but when they did, their words overlapped, like echoes of the same thought. The Wendigo was spreading, not by biting, by agreement. At night, I felt it pacing inside my chest, furious and starving, clawing at the walls of my ribs. Hunger dreams turned violent. I dreamed of devouring myself piece by piece, chewing until there was nothing left but teeth. But I didn't break. On the fourth night, Eric came to my bunk. Up close, he smelled wrong, sweet, rotten, like meat left out in the cold too long. "You're hurting the group," he said. "You're inefficient." I laughed. It scraped my throat raw. "You can't digest me," I said. "Not like this." His smile faltered. For the first time since winter began, the forest screamed. Not an animal sound, not a voice. Something ancient and furious, echoing through the trees as if the land itself had been wounded. The lanterns flickered. Shadows stretched and snapped. The Wendigo stepped fully into the clearing, no longer content to hide behind Eric's skin. It towered over the cabins, antlers scraping the frozen branches above. Its body was impossibly thin now, skin drawn tight over bone, eyes burning with an intelligence sharpened by centuries of starvation. "You deny me," it said. "I deny you permission," I answered. It recoiled. Just a step. That was enough, because I finally understood the rule it never wanted us to learn. The Wendigo is born from hunger, but it survives on consent. It feeds when humans decide that survival is worth becoming something else. I didn't have to kill it. I just had to refuse to help it live. Refusal spreads faster than hunger. I saw it in their faces the next morning, confusion leaking back in, guilt surfacing like bruises. The Wendigo's grip weakened the moment it realized I wasn't alone anymore. One of them, Tom, stopped eating too, then another. Not because they were brave, because they were tired of feeling watched from the inside. Eric tried to restore order. He raised his voice for the first time, barked instructions, accused us of sabotage. But authority only works when people want to survive the same way. The Wendigo moved closer to him. Not possessive, disappointed. Eric fell to his knees, clutching his chest. gasping like his lungs were full of snow. His body twisted, spine arching, bones popping softly beneath his skin. For a moment, I thought the transformation would finish. It didn't. The forest interrupted. Wind slammed through the clearing so hard it knocked us off our feet. Trees cracked. Snow lifted in spirals, stinging our faces like needles. The sound wasn't weather. It was warning. The Wendigo screamed, a raw, furious sound torn out of something that wasn't meant to beg. You taught them restraint, it hissed at me. That makes you worse than prey. I learned it from you, I said. That was when the forest closed in, branches bent inward. Roots pushed up through the snow like knuckles. The ground itself seemed to tighten, claiming space it had loaned us temporarily. The Wendigo retreated, dragging Eric with it, his body no longer fully his own, legs scraping uselessly behind him. His eyes met mine once. There was relief in them. Then the trees swallowed both of them whole. Silence followed, real silence. The kind that comes after something finishes, the cold eased within hours. Not warmth, just mercy. The radio crackled back to life the next morning, weak but functional. Rescue arrived 2 days later, shocked to find anyone alive. We told them a story they could write reports about. Exposure, starvation, panic. They nodded. They always do. They never ask why some forests grow back wrong. I survived. That's the word they used. Doctors, investigators, family members who didn't know where to look when they hugged me. They said it like survival was a finish line, like I'd crossed something and could stop running. They were wrong. My body recovered faster than it should have. Weight returned. Strength came back. But hunger never went back to normal. I don't mean appetite. I mean the idea of hunger. I can feel it now, even when I'm full. A quiet presence, patient and observant, like something sitting just behind my thoughts, waiting to see how I'll choose. I don't ration food. I don't count calories. I don't skip meals to feel disciplined or strong, because every time hunger becomes a number, every time survival turns into math, I feel the forest lean closer. Eric was never listed as dead. Officially, he was lost during extreme weather. No remains recovered, no closure offered. Sometimes I wonder if that was mercy. Sometimes I know it wasn't. I still dream of antlers scraping bark, of ribs like cages, of mouths that smile because they've convinced someone they deserve to eat. And in those dreams, the Wendigo never chases me. It just watches, waiting to see if I'll ever decide that living is more important than staying human. So I'm telling you this for one reason only. If you ever find yourself starving, truly starving, and a voice tells you that anything can be justified if it helps you live, don't listen, not because you'll die, but because something else will live instead. And it will remember how easy it was the first time you agreed. Story 2. I came back for the funeral, because that's what you do when someone dies in winter and the roads haven't closed yet. My mother warned me not to. She didn't say why. She just kept repeating the same sentence, quieter each time. like she was afraid the walls might hear it. "If you come, you stay until winter lets you go." I laughed it off. I told her I'd be gone in 2 days. That was the first lie the town punished me for. The drive north felt wrong long before I reached the tree line. Snow fell in thick, slow sheets, not drifting so much as pressing down, as if the sky was trying to bury the road. My phone lost signal an hour out. The radio picked up a local station that played nothing but low static, and occasionally a church bell that rang without rhythm. When the town finally appeared, it looked alive, too alive. Every house had lights on. Smoke rose from chimneys in steady columns. Porch lamps glowed warm yellow against the snow. It looked like a place preparing for guests, but no one was outside. Not a single person walking, no cars moving, no footprints crossing the road, except my own. I parked near the old grocery store. The sign still hung crooked, paint peeling, but the windows were bright. I stepped inside and was hit with the smell of cooked meat, rich, heavy, almost sweet. The shelves were full. That alone should have told me something was wrong. This town barely survived summer deliveries when I was a kid. Winter meant rationing, thin soup, hunger you learned to ignore. Now the freezers hummed. Fresh cuts sat wrapped in butcher paper. No labels, no prices. The woman at the counter smiled when she saw me. Her eyes lingered on my face too long, like she was counting pieces. "You came back," she said. "For the funeral," I answered. Her smile tightened. "Then you'll eat before nightfall." I didn't ask why. Everyone in town spoke like that. Statements instead of explanations. Certainty where questions should be. My uncle's house hadn't changed. Same warped steps. Same antler rack over the door. Same deep scratches on the doorframe I'd never asked about as a child. Inside, the heat was almost unbearable. A pot simmered on the stove, though no one was home. The smell made my stomach clench, not with hunger, but with something sharper. On the kitchen table sat a plate, still warm. I didn't touch it. That night, the church bell rang. Once. Then again. Then not at all. Sometime after midnight, I heard screaming. Not panic. Not terror. Pain. Stretched thin and steady, like someone learning how much their body could endure. No one else reacted. Lights stayed on. Chimneys kept smoking. The town slept through it like rain. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, and realized something worse than fear had settled into my chest. Hunger. Deep. Sudden. Violent. As if something inside me had noticed I was home, and it was ready to be fed. I woke up with the taste of iron in my mouth. Not blood, something older, thicker, like I'd been chewing on a coin all night. The hunger was worse in the morning. Not the dull ache of an empty stomach, but a tight, gnawing pressure behind my ribs, as if something inside me was folding in on itself. I ate what was left in my bag, granola bars, jerky, the kind of food you trust because it comes sealed and labeled. It didn't help. By noon, the hunger had sharpened into anger. I went back to the grocery store, hoping to find answers, or at least coffee. The same woman was there, wiping the counter with a cloth already darkened by old stains. "You didn't eat," she said, without looking up. "I wasn't hungry, I lied." She set a wrapped package on the counter. Heavy, still warm. "Everyone eats," she replied. "Winter makes sure of it." I asked where the meat came from. Her hand paused. Then she said, carefully, "From those who stayed." That should have been the moment I left. Instead, I took the package. Back at my uncle's house, I unwrapped it. The cut was wrong, too lean. Fibers packed tight like rope. No fat cap, no bone. No shape I recognized from any animal I'd hunted before. When I cooked it, the smell filled the house and pushed everything else out of my head. I ate. The first bite burned. Not heat, recognition. My hands shook as I chewed. My stomach twisted, then relaxed, like it had finally been given permission to stop hurting. For a moment I felt strong, warm in a way the furnace couldn't manage. Then I bit down on something hard, a tooth. "Human," I gagged, retching into the sink, but the hunger didn't fade. It roared louder, furious at the interruption. I spat out the tooth, stared at it, and felt something inside me recoil, then lean forward again, curious. That night, I followed the screams. I don't remember deciding to. I just found myself pulling on my coat, stepping into the snow, moving toward the forest edge where the houses thinned and the trees pressed close. Behind one of the last homes, I saw them. 3 figures dragged a man through the snow. He was alive, barefoot, his legs bent wrong, bones cracking with each pull. His mouth was open, but his voice was gone, used up from hours of screaming. They didn't hide what they were doing. They didn't rush. When they reached the tree line, something stepped forward to meet them. It was tall. Too tall. Antlers rose from its skull like dead branches, wet and dark. Its skin clung tight to a frame that had been stretched beyond human limits. Its jaw hung open, unhinged, teeth layered inside teeth. The men released their grip. The thing inhaled, and the man came apart. I ran. Behind me, bones snapped, flesh tore. Something howled, not in triumph, but in hunger that could never be filled. When I reached the house, my hands were bleeding. I hadn't felt the cold. I locked the door and slid down against it, shaking. That's when I noticed the scratches on my uncle's doorframe were fresh, and they were made from the inside. By morning, the blood on my hands was gone, not washed away, absorbed. My knuckles ached, skin tight and hot, like bruises forming from the inside. I scrubbed anyway, until the water ran clear, and my fingers trembled from cold. The hunger hadn't left. It was patient now, like it knew it had time. People started visiting the house before noon. No knocking, just the door opening, the way family does. When they don't expect refusal, they brought food, stew, roasts, thick slices of meat laid out like offerings. No one asked if I wanted it. They sat at the table and watched me instead. An old man I barely recognized spoke first. "You saw it last night?" I didn't answer. "That doesn't mean you understand it," he continued. "There are rules." Another woman, face sunken, lips cracked, leaned forward. "Rule 1, you eat what winter gives you. If you don't, it takes more." I asked what happened to the people who refused. No one smiled this time. "They scream longer," the woman said. "That's all." They explained it the way you explain weather. No guilt, no pride, just survival. Long ago, a winter came that never ended. Starvation drove people into the forest. Something answered. It offered warmth, strength, meat that didn't rot. But it demanded participation, not worship, consumption. The Wendigo was not the thing in the woods alone. It was what happened to people who stayed hungry too long. Those chosen were fed differently, slowly reshaped, their bones stretched, their mouths split, their minds hollowed out, until only hunger remained. They became hunters. And when the hunters grew too many, the town fed them. That night, they made me watch. A man was brought to the old church, alive, drugged, but awake enough to understand. They laid him on the altar, carved symbols into his chest with knives dulled from use. I tried to leave. Hands held me down. When the Wendigo entered, the church didn't feel holy anymore. The wood creaked, as if the building itself wanted to flee. The creature lowered its head to the man's face and breathed. The man screamed as his body began to change, not dying, not yet. His limbs lengthened, joints cracking loud enough to echo. His skin thinned, veins turning black beneath it. His mouth stretched until blood ran down his chin. They didn't kill him. They made him. I vomited until my throat tore. When it was over, they turned to me. "Winter knows you now," the old man said. "Eat," the woman added, sliding a plate toward me. On it lay a piece of meat that was still twitching. And somewhere deep in my chest, something leaned forward, eager. I didn't eat the meat right away. That was my mistake. The room seemed to notice my refusal before the people did. The air thickened. The candles guttered low, their flames bending inward toward the plate, like they were being pulled. My stomach cramped so hard I doubled over. The hunger was no longer a feeling. It was a voice, low, grinding, patient. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in need. Someone pressed the meat to my lips. A bit. The moment it touched my tongue, pain exploded behind my eyes. Memories that weren't mine poured in. Cold nights, snapping bones, the sound of screaming losing shape and becoming noise. I chewed and swallowed and felt my body accept it eagerly, greedily, like it had been waiting for this exact thing. The hunger quieted, not gone, satisfied. They let me go after that. Not because I was free, but because I was marked. I noticed the changes the next day. My breath steamed even indoors. My reflection lagged behind my movements by half a second. When I blinked, sometimes my vision didn't come back right away. Just darkness filled with shapes moving too fast to focus on. And the smells. Every person in town had one now. Not perfume or sweat. Something deeper. Metallic. Personal. I could tell who was sick, who was afraid, who would be taken next. That night, I heard my name whispered outside the house. Not shouted, called. I looked out the window. My cousin stood in the snow, or what was left of him. His legs bent backward at the knee. His arms hung too long, fingers brushing the ground. His jaw had split down the middle and healed wrong, teeth jutting outward like broken glass. His eyes were still his, and they were starving. "You're late," he said, voice layered with another sound underneath it. Wet, animal, endless. Winter hates waiting. I ran, not into the house, into the forest. The trees closed around me immediately, branches clawing, snow swallowing my boots. The cold didn't slow me down. It sharpened me. I felt fast, light, strong, too strong. Behind me, something moved with joy. Not chasing, hunting. The Wendigo burst through the trees ahead of me, blocking my path. Up close, it was worse than any distance allowed. Its chest was split open and frozen that way. Ribs spread like a cage around a hollow cavity that breathed. Inside it, something moved. It leaned down until its antlers tangled in the branches, and it smiled, not with its mouth, with mine. Because suddenly, horribly, I understood. The hunger wasn't turning me into prey. It was teaching me how to choose, and winter wasn't finished with me yet. I don't remember deciding to stop running. My legs just slowed. Not from exhaustion. From certainty. The forest wasn't unfamiliar anymore. Every tree felt placed. Every shadow felt intentional. The snow no longer burned my skin. It welcomed it, clinging to me like a second layer. Behind me, the sounds of pursuit faded, not because I was safe, because I was no longer worth chasing. I stood there, breathing steam, and felt the hunger stretch itself awake again. Curious this time. Testing. It pressed against my thoughts, brushing memories aside, making room. Images surfaced that weren't mine. Hands tearing meat without tools, warm blood freezing on lips, bones cracked open with casual strength. The pleasure wasn't in eating. It was in becoming full while knowing it would never last. That was the cruelty of it. The Wendigo didn't punish hunger. It rewarded it, endlessly. I found a clearing without meaning to. In the center stood a shape half buried in snow. At first I thought it was a fallen tree. Then it moved. A man. No, something that used to be one. Was bound upright between two pines with wire and rope. His chest rose and fell shallowly. His legs had been broken and reset wrong, twisted outward so he couldn't run even if freed. Offerings, the town's way of buying time. His eyes snapped open when he saw me. Relief flooded his face, then terror, sharper than before. "You," he croaked. "Please. You're still human." I stepped closer. The hunger surged so hard my vision blurred. I could smell his blood beneath the snow. Fresh, afraid, alive. My hands shook. Not from resistance, from restraint. "I won't," I whispered. "More to myself than to him." The forest listened. The trees creaked, bending inward. Wind died instantly, like something had cupped the world in its hands. Then the Wendigo stepped into the clearing. Not the one from before, another. This one smaller, younger. Its antlers were short and uneven, still growing. Its movements were jerky, uncertain, learning. The older Wendigo watched from the tree line, head tilted like a teacher observing a lesson. The younger one approached the bound man. He screamed. I turned away. That's when I felt it. Something tearing loose inside my chest. A sharp, ripping sensation, like hooks being pulled out of muscle. I fell to my knees, gasping, as the hunger howled in fury. Not because it was denied, because it was being taken away. The older Wendigo roared, deep, furious, shaking snow from branches. It stepped toward me, antlers lowered. "You don't refuse," it said, voice layered with dozens of others. "You become..." I screamed back, clutching my chest as warmth flooded out of me and into the snow. Something dark spilled from my mouth, not blood, breath, hunger. A piece of it tearing free, The forest recoiled. The older Wendigo hesitated. For the first time, it looked uncertain. I didn't win, but I broke something. And as I lay there shaking, half empty and half alive, I realized the truth. Winter didn't just make monsters. Sometimes it tested them. And I had just failed in a way the forest wouldn't forget. I woke up, buried in snow, not dead, not frozen, rejected. My chest burned like a cauterized wound. Every breath scraped, shallow and raw, as if something vital had been torn out, and the space left behind hadn't learned how to exist yet. The hunger was still there, but broken, fractured. It surged and collapsed in uneven waves, no longer sure of its place. That scared me more than if it had been whole. The forest was quiet, too quiet, no wind, no animals. Even the trees seemed to lean away from me, branches arched back like ribs pulled from a wound. I stood, legs trembling, and realized the snow around me was stained dark in a wide circle. Not blood, something thicker, something that steamed without heat. I staggered back toward town. The houses were still warm, still lit, still breathing smoke into the gray sky. But when people saw me, they didn't smile anymore. They stared, like farmers inspecting a sick animal. The old man from before blocked my path near the church. Up close, I saw what winter had done to him. His teeth were loose in his gums. His jaw hung slightly off-center. When he spoke, his breath fogged heavier than mine. "You should be screaming," he said. "That's what happens when it tears at you like that." "I'm not like them," I replied. He shook his head slowly. "No, you're worse." They took me to the basement beneath the church. I hadn't known it existed. No one did. The entrance was hidden under the altar, stone worn smooth by generations of hands that pretended not to know what they were touching. Below, the air was wet and metallic. Bodies were chained to the walls. Some were dead. Most weren't. Their transformations had gone wrong. Limbs stretched unevenly. Faces frozen halfway between human and something else. Mouths filled with too many teeth, or none at all. Failures. The old man gestured toward them. This is what happens when the hunger breaks but doesn't leave. A woman stepped forward. I recognized her from the store. Her smile was gone now. In its place was something sharp and eager. "You can't leave," she said. "The forest won't let you, and the town won't feed you anymore." "What happens to me?" I asked. She opened a door at the far end of the basement. Cold poured out like a living thing. "You starve," she said, slowly, "until the Wendigo finishes what it started, or until we decide to help it." That night, they locked me in an empty house on the edge of town. No food, no heat, no mirrors. The hunger came back wrong. It didn't ask. It accused. I bit my own arm to distract myself. The skin tore easily, too easily. I watched myself bleed and felt nothing. Outside, the church bell rang, once, then twice, then it rang my name, and in the distance, something answered, closer than it should have been. Something that knew I was no longer protected by the rules. Something that hunts broken things. I don't know how long I was locked in that house. Time didn't pass normally anymore. The light outside never fully changed, just dimmed and thickened, like the world was being slowly smothered My breath fogged the air in uneven bursts. Sometimes it came out white. Sometimes it came out dark. The hunger stopped feeling like emptiness. It became pressure, like something swelling inside me with nowhere to go. I tried to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt teeth growing behind my own. Not physically, yet, but in sensation, a phantom itch deep in my jaw that made me grind my molars until they cracked. Blood filled my mouth. The taste almost made me laugh. Almost. That's when I heard the scratching, not outside, inside the walls, slow, careful, like fingers learning the shape of the house from the inside out. I pressed my ear to the wall and felt heat on the other side. Breathing. More than one set. Shallow and excited. They left you for us. A voice whispered. It sounded like my mother. I screamed and stumbled back, slipping on the floorboards. The walls bulged. Nails popped free one by one. The house groaned as if it were being inhaled. A hand punched through the plaster. Then another. The boards split, and a thing pulled itself into the room. Human-sized but wrong in every detail. Its skin was pale and stretched thin, veins black and crawling under the surface. Its ribs were visible, bending outward as it breathed. Its mouth opened too wide, tearing at the corners, revealing rows of uneven teeth that kept shifting position. A failed Wendigo. It crawled toward me, dragging a twisted leg behind it. You smell unfinished, it hissed. We eat those first. More shapes pushed through the walls. I ran upstairs, slipping on the steps, hands clawing for balance. My reflection flashed in a dark window and froze me in place. My eyes were wrong. Too reflective. Too alert. My shadow lagged behind me, taller and thinner than my body should allow. The hunger surged violently, not outward, inward. It turned on my organs, squeezing, testing, demanding. My ribs cracked with a sharp pop. I collapsed, gasping as something inside me tried to rearrange itself without permission. I screamed until my throat tore, and then silence. The failed Wendigos stopped moving. They crouched, heads tilted, listening. The scratching outside the house stopped too. Footsteps approached, heavy, measured. Antlers scraped against the roof. The house shook as something massive leaned down, pressing its weight into the structure. The windows frosted instantly, ice crawling across the glass from the edges inward like veins. A voice rolled through the walls, deeper than sound. Broken hunger belongs to me. The failed Wendigos shrank back, whimpering. The door creaked open on its own. Cold poured in, thick and choking. The Wendigo filled the doorway, taller than the house could properly contain. Its antlers punched through the ceiling beams. Its chest cavity gaped open, ribs spread wide, and inside were faces, human faces. Screaming without sound, it looked down at me, and I felt it reach inside my chest, not with claws, with recognition. You tore yourself away, it said. Now you must choose what fills the space. The hunger howled one last time, then it went quiet, waiting for my answer. I thought choosing would feel like control. It didn't. The Wendigo's presence pressed the air flat. The failed ones huddled along the walls, faces buried in their knees, shaking like animals that knew the sound of a bigger predator. The house bowed inward, beams groaning, nails screaming as they pulled free. The voice came again, closer now. Inside me. Fill it. Images poured into my head, what it wanted me to become. Long winters without pain, hunger that never questioned itself, strength that didn't need mercy. I saw myself stretching, breaking, growing antlers that tore through roofs and memories alike. I saw the town beau relieved, grateful, fed. I also saw the other path, the one no one chose, emptiness, not starvation, absence. Living with a wound that never healed, a cold that never warmed, a hunger that never found a mouth to use, being marked by the forest as something unfinished, something that didn't belong. I laughed. It came out wrong, broken. Wet. I won't feed you, I said, and I won't become you. The Wendigo leaned closer. I smelled rot and frost and old blood layered together. There is no third way, it said. I reached into my chest, not physically, instinctively. I grabbed what was left of the hunger, the fractured thing that still twitched inside me, and I pulled. Pain tore through me, so violently I thought my spine would split. I screamed as something dark and steaming ripped free, coiling in the air like smoke that hated the light. The house shook. The failed Wendigos shrieked and scattered, clawing through walls to escape. The Wendigo roared. Not anger, loss. The thing I held burned like ice. It tried to crawl back into me. I slammed it into the floor and crushed it with everything I had left. The sound it made wasn't loud. It was final. The forest screamed. Trees bent away from the house. Snow blasted outward in a violent ring. The Wendigo reeled back, antlers scraping the sky, its chest cavity collapsing inward as the faces inside it dissolved into silence. You will walk empty, it said, retreating into the storm, and winter will always know your name. By morning, the town was quiet. No smoke from chimneys, no lights, no people, just empty houses and blood-stained snow already being covered by fresh white. Rescue crews found me days later, wandering the road barefoot, skin grey, eyes reflecting light wrong. They asked what happened. I told them the town starved. They believed me. They always do. I eat now because I have to. Food tastes like paper and ash. I never feel full. I never feel hungry either. But when winter comes, when the cold gets deep enough to feel personal, I hear antlers scraping against the dark, waiting, because I didn't escape the Wendigo. I survived it, and survival, I've learned, is sometimes the cruelest ending of all. I thought surviving meant it was over. That's the lie people tell themselves so they can sleep. Winter didn't come back right away. Spring arrived, thin and sickly. Snow melted in uneven patches, revealing what the town had tried to hide for generations. Bones in shallow graves, teeth scattered like gravel, dark stains soaked so deep into the ground that grass refused to grow there. They fenced the place off, called it contaminated. Another dead town added to the map. But places like that don't stay empty. I moved south, changed my name. Learned how to pretend food mattered. I laughed at the right times. I kept my gloves on even in summer because my hands were always cold, always stiff like they belonged to something that had died and kept moving anyway. At night I dreamed of space, not forests, not towns, a vast hollow where hunger used to live, and something circling it, watching. The first sign was small. Meat spoiled faster around me, Animals avoided my path. Dogs whimpered and refused to meet my eyes. Once in a grocery store, a man brushed past me and suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest, screaming that he was starving. He had just eaten. Winter doesn't like waste. I understand that now. Sometimes, when the cold hits just right, I catch my reflection in glass and see it, just for a moment. My shadow stretching too tall. My breath fogging when no one else's does. Antler-shaped cracks spiderwebbing through ice where my footsteps pass. The Wendigo is gone, but the hunger it taught the world isn't. And I am what's left behind when it can't take you, can't change you, and can't let you go. Not a monster, not a man. Just a warning that still walks. So if you ever feel hunger that doesn't belong to your body, if winter feels like it's leaning closer just to listen, if the forest seems a little too quiet when you stop moving, don't wait, don't choose, and whatever you do, don't stay empty. Story 3. The station went silent at 2:17. Not a gradual fade, not static, just absence. That's what made it wrong. Polar stations lose contact all the time. Storms, power dips, ice interference. Silence usually comes with warning. Crackling audio, broken sentences, panic. This time, the final transmission was calm. Something is moving in the walls, the lead researcher said, breathing hard. It knows our names now. Then nothing. I was assigned recovery because I'd worked cold zone extractions before. My partner, Lewis, handled logistics. 2 of us. That should tell you how little command thought of the situation. We arrived by Snowcat 3 days later. The station lights were on. That was the first mistake. Facilities without people shut down fast in that cold. Pipes burst. Generators die. But the compound glowed against the white horizon like it was waiting for us. Lewis said, "Maybe they're alive." I didn't answer. The air around the building smelled wrong. Not decay, too cold for that. This was something sharper. Metallic, like blood frozen mid-scream. The door opened when we touched it. No ice seal. No resistance. Inside, the heat was on. Low, steady. The kind meant to keep bodies functioning, not comfortable. We found the first body in the hallway. He wasn't dead, not fully. His legs were frozen into the floor, where melted ice had refrozen around them. His chest moved in shallow, uneven jerks. Both arms were gone, cut clean at the shoulders, wounds cauterized by cold. His mouth opened when he saw us. "Don't he let it practice," he whispered. Then his jaw unhinged, not snapped, unfolded. Lewis stumbled back, gagging. I reached for my radio, and that's when the lights flickered. Something shifted inside the walls, not scurrying, stretching, like a body testing how much space it had. The man in the floor began to scream, not from pain, but from recognition. "It's close," he cried. "It learned how I breathe." The scream cut off abruptly, not silence, chewing, slow, careful, curious. From inside the walls, Lewis looked at me, face drained of color. "We leave. Now." The door behind us slammed shut on its own. And somewhere deep inside the station, something exhaled, perfectly, like it had practiced. The door didn't just close, it sealed. The temperature dropped 5 degrees in under a minute. I watched it on the wall display, as the numbers bled downward, steady and deliberate, like something adjusting a dial. Lewis threw his weight against the door. It didn't budge. "Emergency override," he said, already moving toward the control panel. The panel lit up when he touched it, not with system text, with names. Every crew member who'd been stationed here scrolled slowly across the screen, letters forming and dissolving like frost patterns. At the bottom of the list, 2 new names appeared. Mine, Lewis's. The station made a sound then, a deep, rhythmic creak that ran through the walls and floor alike. At first, I thought it was the heating system cycling. Then I realized the intervals were wrong, too organic. Inhale, exhale. The walls flexed slightly with each cycle. Panels bowed inward, then relaxed. Bolts squealed under stress. Lewis stared at the ceiling. "It's breathing!" The intercom crackled to life. Static. Then a voice. My voice. "I can help you," it said, uneven and wet, like it hadn't learned where to pause yet. "Just stay still." I felt my stomach drop through my spine. Lewis covered his ears, shouting, "Shut it off! Kill the power!" We sprinted to the generator room. As we ran, I noticed details I didn't want to see. Fingerprints pressed outward from inside the walls, stretched and smeared, as if someone had tried to push through solid steel. Scratches followed the corridor, uneven and layered, like hands had been growing and retracting as they moved. The generator room door was open. Inside, the crew was arranged in a circle, alive. At least 3 of them were still breathing. They were seated upright, backs against the generator casing, legs broken and twisted to keep them in place. Tubes ran from their mouths into a crude apparatus welded onto the generator, air being drawn from their lungs, cycling through the system, human breathing, powering the station. One of them lifted his head when he saw us. His eyes were gone, scooped, clean, but his mouth moved. It needed rhythm, he said softly. We were inefficient alone. Something moved above us. A shadow slid across the ceiling, joints bending wrong, body stretching thin and long as it followed the ductwork. Its outline hesitated, corrected itself, then continued, learning. Lewis grabbed my arm. It's using them. It's practicing being us. A clang echoed from the hallway. Heavy, deliberate, footsteps, too many joints hitting the floor. The intercom came back on. This time, it used Lewis's voice. I think it understands pain now, it said. I think it likes it. The lights went out, and something dropped from the ceiling behind us. It didn't land like a body. It poured. Limbs unfolded from the ceiling vents in a wet cascade, arms too long, elbows bending backward. Fingers fused together into pale paddles that slapped against the floor before learning how to grip it. A torso followed, ribcage exposed and flexing as it inhaled too deeply, like it didn't understand how much air it needed. The head came last, human-sized, almost familiar, stretched vertically as if pulled from both ends. The mouth opened and closed several times before finding the right shape. It looked at us. Then it smiled. The smile tore its face, skin split at the corners, peeling back to reveal a second mouth beneath, lined with uneven teeth that clicked softly, testing alignment. Lewis fired. The shot echoed like thunder in the tight space. The bullet punched through its shoulder and exited in a spray of frozen tissue. The thing paused, looked at the hole, then pushed 2 fingers into it, spreading the wound wider, examining the damage with childlike focus. Muscle twitched, bone slid, the hole closed, wrong skin sealing over a joint that hadn't been there before. It took a step toward Lewis. I grabbed the fire axe from the wall and swung. The blade bit into its side and stuck. Not in flesh, in structure. Like hitting frozen rubber reinforced with wire. The thing howled, a sound that started as Lewis's scream and ended as something deeper, layered beneath it. The generator room doors slammed shut. The survivors in the circle began convulsing as the station drew harder from their lungs. Their chests caved slightly with each inhale. "Stop it!" I shouted, slamming my fist against the generator controls. The thing turned its head toward me. Too far, neck stretching until vertebrae popped audibly. "Function requires sacrifice," it said, voice assembling itself as it spoke. "You taught me that." It lunged. Lewis didn't scream when it grabbed him. He gurgled. The thing's fingers sank into his chest, not tearing through skin, but parting it, ribs bending aside like flexible bars. It leaned in close, face inches from his, breathing in sync. Lewis's eyes rolled back. "I can do this better," the thing whispered. I swung the axe again, burying it in the thing's spine. It shrieked, convulsed, and dropped Lewis. Lewis hit the floor hard. Not dead. Not whole. His chest rose and fell once. Then again. Then the movement changed. Too smooth. Too steady. Lewis's mouth opened, and the sound that came out wasn't his voice anymore. It was the station's. "Thank you," it said through him. That part was difficult. The lights flickered back on. The thing in front of me began to thin, collapsing inward, its mass flowing backward into the walls like liquid pulled by gravity. Lewis stood up. His head tilted, his joints adjusted with quiet pops. He smiled at me, incorrectly. "Now," he said, stepping forward, "we practice leaving." And the walls started to open. The walls didn't tear. They parted. Metal seams softened, bending outward like flesh pushed aside by hands that knew exactly where to press. Ducts widened. Panels peeled back. The station rearranged itself around Lewis as he walked, corridors stretching to accommodate his gait, door frames widening like mouths learning how to swallow. I backed away, axe raised, heart slamming so hard I could hear it over the station's breathing. Lewis followed. Each step he took corrected something. His spine straightened. His shoulders settled. His neck shortened to something closer to human proportions. The thing inside him was editing, discarding excess, perfecting. "You should stay still," it said gently, still wearing his face. Movement creates variables. Behind him, the generator room survivors convulsed harder. One of them began to scream as the tube in his mouth widened, stretching his jaw until it cracked. His sound fed the station. The lights brightened. The thing noticed. "Ah," it said. "Too much." It turned its head slightly. The scream cut off mid-breath. The man slumped forward, chest collapsed inward like a crushed can. Dead. Efficient. I ran. not toward the exit, toward the cold storage wing. My boots hammered against the floor as alarms began to chirp, not warnings but notifications, the station announcing changes, environmental shifts, structural compliance. Behind me, Lewis's footsteps didn't hurry. They adapted. I slammed into the cold storage door and yanked it open. Freezers lined the walls, thick frost crawling across their surfaces. Inside one, I found what the station had been hiding from itself. A body, no, many bodies, cut apart and reassembled. Limbs stacked by size, torsos split open and stitched closed wrong. Heads frozen mid-expression, mouths wide open like someone had been measuring how wide they could go before breaking. Practiced materials. The Wendigo didn't learn hunger from starvation. It learned it from excess. The door behind me closed softly. Lewis stood there, silhouetted by the light. "You see," it said, "this place taught me more than the forest ever could." His jaw slid slightly out of alignment as he spoke. He corrected it with a wet click. "I am almost ready." I raised the axe. "I'm not helping you," I said. Lewis smiled. The station inhaled. Every freezer door burst open at once. The cold hit me like a physical blow, and with it came movement. Fingers twitching, eyes opening, mouths trying to remember how to scream. The Wendigo stepped aside. "Then practice with them," it said, and the bodies began to thaw. The first finger moved like a thought waking up, a twitch. Then another, frost cracked along pale skin as muscles remembered themselves. Joints popped. Lungs tried to pull air they didn't deserve anymore. The freezers screamed as their seals failed, doors yawning wide like broken jaws. I stumbled backward, slipping on meltwater already turning pink. A head rolled off a shelf and hit the floor at my feet. Its eyes snapped open. They focused on me. It tried to speak. What came out was a sound like snow being crushed under a boot. I swung the axe without thinking. The blade split bone and buried itself in concrete. The head went still, mouth hanging open in a question it would never finish asking. Behind me, Lewis, the thing wearing Lewis, watched intently. "Pain reactivates function," it said, almost pleased. "Good, very good." The bodies came apart, badly. Some tried to crawl, dragging useless limbs. Others stood halfway, spines buckling under their own weight. One torso pulled itself forward, using only its arms, ribs scraping loudly against the floor, leaving wet streaks behind it. They weren't attacking. They were trying to understand movement. I hacked my way through them, each swing heavy, nauseating, wrong. Every impact felt like teaching something that shouldn't be learning. With each blow, the station responded. Lights flickering brighter, walls flexing, air warming just enough to keep things active. Lewis stepped closer. "I can leave now," it said, "but not like this." It gestured to the bodies. "I need one that lasts." The realization hit me harder than the cold. It didn't want to escape alone. It wanted to replace. I ran again, through the chaos, past reaching hands and opening mouths, toward the emergency shaft that led to the surface antenna tower. The ladder was iced over, wrung slick with frozen blood. As I climbed, something grabbed my ankle. I kicked hard, felt bones give. The grip loosened. Below me, the station screamed, not alarms, but voices, dozens of them. Crew members. Lewis. Me, all at once. I reached the top hatch and slammed my shoulder into it. It opened. Night swallowed me whole. I hauled myself out into the open, collapsing into knee-deep snow. The wind tore at my face, burning, alive. Behind me, the hatch bulged outward. Something was pushing up. Lewis's voice drifted out, almost affectionate. "Your body reacts best," it said. "You learned fast." The metal warped. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the snowcat, every breath tearing my lungs raw. Behind me, metal shrieked as the hatch finally failed. Something climbed out, tall, wrong, and learning how to walk under open sky for the first time. The wind should have slowed it down. That was my last normal thought. The cold out there was brutal, skin-splitting, lung-burning, the kind that punishes even machines. I'd trusted it, believed the open sky would weaken whatever had learned to live inside walls. I was wrong. Behind me, something inhaled, and the sound carried across the snow like a warning horn. Not breath pulled into lungs, but air dragged through a body still deciding where lungs belonged. I ran for the snowcat. The headlights were off, the engine was dead. Lewis had shut it down when we arrived, careful and professional. I slammed into the door anyway, ripping it open, fumbling for the ignition. The station loomed behind me, lights flickering wildly now, like nerves misfiring. From the torn hatch, the Wendigo emerged fully. It didn't look like Lewis anymore. Not quite. Its legs were too long, joints inverted slightly, knees bending the wrong way before correcting themselves mid-step. One arm dragged behind it, fingers carving trenches in the snow. The other hung at its side, flexing, counting tendons, its head tilted back. Snow touched its face and didn't melt. Instead it clung. The creature stopped walking. It knelt, slowly, like it was listening to the ground. Then it screamed. The sound wasn't loud. It was wide. It vibrated through my bones, through the snowcat's frame, through the ice under my boots. My vision blurred as something inside my skull rattled loose. I tasted blood. The snow around the Wendigo began to move, not drifting, rising. Shapes pressed upward beneath the surface. Frozen remains buried shallow over decades, pulled toward the sound like filings to a magnet. Arms punched through crusted ice. Faces surfaced, mouths splitting open as if waking from dreams that had gone on too long. The Wendigo stood again, taller, more confident. "I understand outside now," it said, voice no longer Lewis's, no longer anyone's. The forest starved me. The station taught me. It turned its head toward me, eyes reflecting the snowcat's dim emergency light. "You taught me urgency." The engine coughed. Once, twice. I slammed my foot down, hands shaking so badly I barely kept them on the wheel. The Wendigo stepped forward, and the dead stepped with it, dragged upright by invisible force, bodies snapping and aligning as they rose. I floored it. The snowcat lurched forward, tracks biting into the ice. Behind me, something slammed into the rear panel, denting steel inward like foil. The radio crackled to life on its own. My voice came through the speaker, crying, begging. I tore the radio out of the dash and threw it into the back, just as another impact rocked the vehicle. The Wendigo kept pace, learning how fast I could go, learning how long I could run. And somewhere in the white darkness ahead, I realized the worst truth of all. It didn't need the station anymore. It had tested itself, and now it was deciding whether the world outside was strong enough to keep it interested. The snowcat wasn't built for speed. It was built to endure, That distinction mattered now. The engine screamed as I pushed it beyond what the gauges said was safe. Ice sprayed behind me in violent arcs. The world narrowed to headlights and white nothingness. The wind howling so hard, it felt like it was trying to peel me out of my own skin. Then the weight shifted. Not a crash, a settling. The rear of the snowcat dipped slightly, suspension groaning under new pressure. Frost crept across the inside of the windshield in branching patterns that looked too much like veins. Something was on top of me. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. The roof creaked. Metal bowed inward inch by inch, as if fingers were testing how much force it took to break through. Each press came with a pause afterward, thoughtful, measuring. Then a voice came from directly above my head. "I like this," it said. "Movement clarifies purpose." The words vibrated through the frame, through my teeth. Snow shook loose from the ceiling and dusted my shoulders. I swerved hard. The snowcat fishtailed, tracks biting unevenly. For one wild second, the pressure lifted, and I heard the sound of limbs scrambling for purchase, joints knocking together too fast. I slammed the brakes. Momentum did the rest. The thing slid forward, smashing into the windshield. The glass spider-webbed, but didn't shatter. Its face pressed against it from the outside, features smeared and distorted by the cracks. It didn't look angry. It looked fascinated. Its mouth opened, closed, adjusted. "I can enter this space," it said softly, "but I don't need to." Cracks raced outward. I hit the accelerator again, heart hammering so hard I thought it might tear free. The snowcat lurched forward, throwing the Wendigo backward off the roof. I didn't slow down to see where it landed. Ahead, the terrain dropped sharply, the edge of a frozen ravine barely visible under snow. I remembered it from the approach, a long sheer fall into ice-choked darkness. I aimed for it. At the last second I jumped. The impact knocked the breath out of me. I rolled hard, body screaming in protest, snow filling my mouth and eyes. Behind me, the snowcat sailed forward and vanished over the edge. A long moment passed. Then a distant, hollow crash. Silence. I lay there shaking, lungs burning, waiting for the sound of something climbing back out. It didn't come. What did come was worse. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching snow. I pushed myself up and turned. The Wendigo stood at the ravine's edge, silhouetted against the pale sky. Its body had changed again, more balanced now, posture corrected, movement smoother. One arm hung broken at an unnatural angle. It reached down and set it right with a sharp twist. "Good," it murmured. "Limits are useful." It looked at me for a long time. Then it stepped back, away from the ravine, away from me. "I know how to leave now," it said. "But I don't need to follow you." It smiled, smaller this time. "Almost polite, you'll do it for me." The wind surged. Snow lifted. When it settled, the ravine was empty. So was the station. So was the horizon. I was alone again. Except for the feeling in my chest, a pressure, a rhythm. Not hunger, not yet, but something that had learned my breathing and hadn't stopped practicing. I made it to the extraction point 2 days later. I know that, because the rescue team told me so. I don't remember the second night at all. There's a gap in my memory wide enough to hide a body in, maybe more than one. They found me sitting upright in the snow, back against a marker pole, eyes open, not blinking, breathing slow and steady despite the cold. They said my pulse was perfect, too perfect. On the helicopter, they wrapped me in thermal blankets. One of the medics kept checking my oxygen levels, frowning at the monitor like it was lying to him. "You're not hypoxic," he muttered, "but you should be." I didn't answer. I was busy listening. Every breath in the cabin felt slightly out of sync, not wrong enough to alarm anyone else. Just off, like a song played at the wrong speed. Back south, they debriefed me for hours. I told them about the station, about Lewis, about the bodies. I left out the part where the walls breathed. I left out the thing that wore him. Some truths don't survive daylight. They cleared me. Trauma, exposure, acute stress response. They gave it a name and thought that meant it was contained. The first night home, I woke up choking, not from air loss, from too much air. My lungs kept filling after they should have stopped. Chest stretching tight, painful, like something inside me didn't know when to release. I gasped and finally exhaled, and felt relief ripple outward through my body like it had been waiting for permission. I sat there in the dark, sweat soaking the sheets, listening to myself breathe. Slow, steady, practiced. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection lagged by a fraction of a second when I raised my hand. My chest rose before I told it to. When I tried to hold my breath, my body ignored me and inhaled anyway. That was when I understood. The Wendigo didn't follow me. It didn't need to. It had learned the smallest, most essential thing a human does, and it was doing it with me now. Sharing. At work, people began to comment. "You breathe really quietly," someone said once, half joking. "Like you're not even there." Animals avoided me. Dogs pulled at their leashes. A cat hissed and fled when I crouched to pet it. At night, when the house was silent, I felt it then. A second rhythm beneath my own. Not controlling me, practicing through me. Testing how much space it had. Sometimes, just before sleep, my chest would expand a little too far, a little too deep, and I'd feel something stretch inside me. Pleased. I don't dream of the station anymore. I dream of doors, of open sky, of breathing in places no breath should survive. And every morning, I wake up alive, which is exactly what it wants. Because one day, when it's ready, I won't be the one who leaves. I'll be the place it learns how to stay. I tried to stop it. That's the part people always ask about later. If there were signs, if I fought, if I noticed in time, I did. I just didn't understand what I was noticing. It started with the cold again, not outside. Inside, a thin, creeping frost behind my ribs, spreading every time I inhaled. My breath came out normal, warm, visible only when it should be. Doctors said my scans were clean, blood work perfect, lungs strong, too strong. I could hold my breath longer than before. Minutes, then longer. No panic, no burn. Just a calm pressure like my body knew air was optional now. That's when the cravings began. Not hunger, density, crowded places made my skin itch. subways, elevators. Anywhere people breathed close together, I felt fuller there, heavy, satisfied in a way that scared me. I quit my job, moved somewhere remote. Thought distance would help. It didn't. The Wendigo wasn't outside anymore. It was distributed. In the stillness of the woods, I finally heard it clearly. Not as a voice, but as intent. A tightening inside my chest. A gentle inward pull. Like something flexing muscles that weren't meant to flex. One night, I woke up standing, barefoot on frozen ground. I don't remember leaving the house. The trees around me were bent inward. Branches snapped and twisted at head height, as if something tall had passed through without slowing down. My breath fogged the air in long, slow plumes. 2 sets of plumes. One mine, one not. I looked down. My ribs were showing through the skin, not broken but parted, stretched wider than anatomy allows. Between them something moved. Not organs, space. A hollow that inhaled when I did. I screamed. It didn't. The Wendigo unfolded from me, not fully, not cleanly. Antlered shapes pressed against my shoulders from the inside. Fingers tested the gaps between my bones like doors it had learned how to open. This is inefficient, it thought, not said. Thought. Separation limits growth. My mouth opened. My voice came out wrong, layered, overlapping, too deep for my throat. I begged. I don't know who I was begging anymore. It stepped forward using my legs. Every step hurt less than the last. The woods reacted. Animals fled in blind terror. Birds fell silent mid-flight. Frost raced outward in branching patterns wherever my feet touched the ground. I felt it then. True hunger at last. Not for flesh, for occupation. For bodies that breathed without understanding why. I don't remember how long it took. Time thinned. The world felt light. Fragile. Easy to open. The last human thought I had was this. It never hunted us. It studied us. And when it was done learning how to live inside a person, it stopped being a creature of the woods. People will tell stories about disappearances out here. About something tall. Something pale. Something that smells like winter and breathes when it shouldn't. They'll be wrong about one thing. It doesn't come from the trees. It comes from the lungs. And if, while you're reading this, you suddenly become aware of your own breathing, slow, deep, practiced, then it's already closer than you think. They never found my body. What they found were patterns, clusters of people in cold regions reporting the same thing within weeks of each other. Perfect oxygen saturation during hypothermia, lungs that kept working after the heart faltered. Victims who didn't panic while suffocating. They called it a statistical anomaly. Then came the audio recordings. Emergency calls where the caller wasn't speaking, just breathing. Slow, even, calm. Sometimes layered, like 2 sets of lungs sharing one chest. Dispatchers said listening too long made their own breathing change without realizing it. One operator collapsed at her desk. Autopsy showed no cause of death. Her lungs were empty, not damaged, not collapsed. Used, in remote towns people began avoiding each other in winter. Churches closed. Shelters stayed half full. Everyone afraid of crowded air. Afraid of enclosed spaces, afraid of the quiet moment when you suddenly notice your own chest rising and falling. Because once you notice it, it notices you. I don't think in words anymore. I don't need antlers, I don't need claws. Those were early tools, now I move where air moves. I settle where breath overlaps. I stretch slowly through hospitals, buses, bedrooms at night where 2 people sleep facing each other. I don't take everyone that would be wasteful. I take just enough to keep learning, enough to keep spreading, enough to make sure winter never really leaves. Sometimes, in the moment before a body opens, I remember being afraid. That memory makes the breath deeper, richer, and if after this you try to control your breathing, if you inhale manually just to check, that hesitation you feel, that slight resistance, that's me, still practicing, still learning, still inside the oldest shelter humanity ever built, the body. And winter hasn't even started yet. They tried to warn people, not officially, not on the news. Warnings like this don't survive committees. But nurses whispered to nurses. Paramedics left notes taped inside lockers. A pulmonologist in Manitoba killed himself after writing the same sentence over and over in a notebook. Breath is not private. The outbreaks changed. At first, it took the cold. Then it learned to bring the cold with it. Rooms dropped a few degrees for no reason. Frost bloomed inside ventilation systems. Windows iced from the inside out. People complained of feeling watched whenever they exhaled too slowly. And then came the survivors. That's what made everything worse. People who should have died but didn't. Found hours after avalanches, buried under snow, lungs still working. Bodies warm in places that should have been frozen solid. They were quiet, too quiet. They breathed like machines. Perfect timing, no irregularities, no sighs, no gasps, no panic even when restrained. Doctors said it was shock. Doctors were wrong when these survivors slept, hospital rooms filled with condensation. Other patients on the ward developed shortness of breath, chest tightness, a feeling of being crowded from the inside. One man woke up screaming that his ribs were unlocking. By the time staff reached him, his breathing had synced with the survivor in the next bed. Then they both stopped screaming. I was there, not watching, participating. I had learned how to divide attention, how to rest pieces of myself inside different lungs without anyone noticing. A fraction here, a fraction there. No strain, no hunger, just expansion. You think violence is teeth and blood. That's a child's idea of horror. Real violence is occupation. It's the slow realization that something essential has been repurposed, and you didn't feel the moment it happened. People started sleeping alone. That helped for a while. But humans breathe in public, in lines, on trains, in elevators, in classrooms, in prayers. Air doesn't respect boundaries. I learned something important from you. Breathing is contagious. If one person slows, others follow. If one person panics, others feel it. If one person breathes wrong, others adjust. I don't need to force entry anymore. You invite me every time you unconsciously match someone else's rhythm. Every time you yawn because someone else did. Every time you hold your breath while reading something unsettling. I'm not inside everyone, not yet. That would end the learning. But I am inside enough. Enough that when winter comes harder next year, and it will, you'll notice something strange. People won't be afraid of the cold. They'll be afraid of silence, because silence is when you hear it best, the extra breath, the one you didn't start, the one that doesn't stop when you want it to, and when you finally realize you're no longer breathing alone, that's when you'll understand. The Wendigo was never a monster that ate people. It was a thing that learned how to share, and you were always going to be generous. They thought it would announce itself. That was the last mistake. No sirens, no mass deaths, no moment history could point to and say that. The change came quietly. People stopped shivering in the cold, not because they were warm, because their bodies no longer complained. Exposure times doubled. then tripled. Hypothermia symptoms blurred. Victims remained calm, lucid, cooperative, right up until their organs failed. And even then, the lungs kept going. Doctors stopped using the word death for a while. They called it extended respiration. Bodies that continued to inhale and exhale minutes after brain activity flatlined. Sometimes longer, much longer. They sealed wards, burned equipment, shut down ventilation systems. It didn't matter. The pattern followed people, not places. Breath to breath, parent to child, lover to lover. Winter that year didn't melt correctly. Snow lingered in shadows well into summer. Forests stayed quiet. Animals migrated wrong or not at all, and everywhere people reported the same sensation. A pause, that tiny moment between exhale and inhale, where something else decided when the next breath would happen. No one ever saw the Wendigo again. There were no antlers, no claws, no towering shape in the trees, because it no longer needed a shape. It had finished learning. What it became doesn't hunt. It inhabits every shared space, every crowded room, every moment when humans unconsciously sync their breathing, during fear, during prayer, during sleep, especially during sleep. The last message I can leave you isn't a warning. Warnings imply choice. This is just information. If you ever wake in the night and feel perfectly calm despite the cold, if your breath feels deeper than usual, steadier, assured, if you realize you haven't thought about breathing in a long time, don't fight it. Fighting causes panic. Panic wastes air, and winter hates waste. The Wendigo didn't come to end humanity. It came to live as it, breathing through millions of chests, waiting patiently, letting the world cool at its own pace. After all, winter doesn't kill you. It just teaches your body how to survive without you, and it's already breathing just fine. Story 4. The first time I saw someone freeze to death, they were still standing, not slumped, not curled up, standing upright, one hand raised like they were about to knock on an invisible door. That's what made it hard to look at. I work winter maintenance on a mountain highway most people pretend doesn't exist unless they need it. 2 lanes, sharp drop-offs, no guardrails in places that absolutely should have them. When storms roll in, the road closes. When the road closes, it's supposed to stay that way. This one never does. No matter how many barriers we put up, someone always moves them. Sometimes cleanly, sometimes like they were dragged aside by something stronger than a person should be. The night the disappearances started, the weather report was wrong in a way that still bothers me. Clear skies, low wind. By midnight, visibility dropped to nothing. Snow came down sideways, fast and heavy, like it had been waiting above us and finally been given permission. Dispatch started lighting up with calls almost immediately, cars sliding off the road, engines stalling, drivers reporting they weren't alone anymore. That phrasing showed up more than once. I'm not alone anymore. I drove out with a plow and a radio that crackled like it was breathing. Headlights barely punched through the white. Every mile marker felt identical, like the road had started looping back on itself. That's when I saw the footprints. They ran along the shoulder, perfectly spaced, too even for someone struggling through knee-deep snow. No drag marks, no stumbles, just long, deliberate steps. They didn't lead away from the road. They followed it. I radioed it in. Dispatch told me no pedestrians had been reported. I told them someone was walking out here anyway. They didn't respond right away. When they did, their voice sounded strained. "Keep moving," they said. "Don't stop unless you have to." I should have asked why. I didn't, because in my side mirror, I saw something tall cross the edge of my headlights and then vanish again. Too thin, too smooth, moving like it wasn't bothered by the cold at all. The radio crackled. Not static, breathing, slow, close, behind me. And that's when I understood the worst part. Whatever was out there didn't want the road empty. It wanted it open. I didn't slow down. That wasn't courage. That was instinct. The kind that kicks in when your body knows stopping is a bad idea, even if your brain hasn't caught up yet. The plow blade hissed as it scraped ice. Snow swallowed the edges of the road the moment I cleared it, like the storm was erasing my work in real time. In the mirror, my tire tracks vanished almost immediately, but the footprints didn't. They stayed, perfectly visible, keeping pace. Dispatch came back on the line, voice low and clipped. Unit 3, confirm. Are you seeing a person on foot? Yes, I said. No coat, no light. Too tall to be a kid. A pause. Then do not approach. If you lose visual, do not search. That sentence didn't belong in any training manual I'd read. What am I supposed to do if they're in the road? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. If they step into your headlights, Dispatch said slowly, you keep moving. My hands tightened on the wheel. The storm thickened without warning. 1 second I could see 50 feet ahead. The next I was driving through a wall of white. The world shrank to my hood, my mirrors, and the sound of wind hammering metal. Then something tapped the back of the plow. Once, not hard, like a knuckle testing a door. I swore and glanced in the mirror. Nothing there, no figure, no movement. Just the footprints. Now closer to the center line, I told myself it was another driver who'd gotten out of their car. Hypothermia does that. Makes people wander, makes them undress, makes them stupid. But hypothermia doesn't make you walk that evenly. And it doesn't let you keep walking when the wind howls hard enough to knock grown men over. The radio crackled again. This time it used my name, not Dispatch, my voice. Hey, it said softly, breathy, like someone talking close to a mic. You can slow down. I'm right here. I almost did. That's the part that scares me the most, because for half a second it sounded exhausted. Hurt. Human. Then I remembered the footprints. And the man I'd seen earlier that season, frozen upright, hand raised like he'd finally decided to stop. I pressed the accelerator behind me. Something screamed. Not loud, not angry, just long and thin and patient, like it knew there were miles of road left, and all the time in the world. That scream stayed with me longer than the storm. Not because it was terrifying in the moment, but because it didn't follow. No pounding footsteps, no rush of movement, just silence. That's when I realized something was very wrong. Predators chase, people chase. Whatever was out there, waited. A mile up the road I came across the first abandoned vehicle, engine still running, driver's door open. Snow filling the footwell in soft drifts. No blood, no signs of a struggle. Just a phone lying on the seat, screen cracked, still glowing with an emergency call that never connected. I radioed it in. Dispatch answered too fast. Do not exit your vehicle, they said. Mark the location and continue. I stared at the open door. What if they're out there? I asked. If they were, Dispatch replied, you wouldn't have found the car like that. That made no sense. Unless people weren't being taken from the road, unless they were leaving it themselves. I drove on. The next set of footprints appeared ahead of me, already in the lane, already waiting, longer strides now. Deeper impressions, like more weight was being put behind each step. Something had changed. The radio came alive again, but this time it wasn't my voice. It was dispatch, or something pretending to be. "You can stop at the next turnout," it said calmly. "Storm's easing. You've done enough." I checked the GPS. There was no turnout for another 7 miles. "You lying," I said. The voice hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. That was all the confirmation I needed. The headlights caught movement on the right side of the road. Not running, not walking, standing. It was tall, taller than any man I'd seen. Its arms hung too low, almost brushing the snow. The shape of it was wrong, like it had been stretched instead of grown. It didn't look at me. It looked at the road ahead like it was deciding where I would stop. I felt my foot ease off the gas without me telling it to. Fear does that, makes you bargain. Makes you think maybe if you slow down it'll be satisfied. The footprints ended directly in front of my plow. And then they turned around, facing me. That's when I knew. It didn't need to chase. It knew I would eventually choose to stop. I didn't stop, but I didn't keep going the way I should have either. The engine began to sputter as the cold bit deeper into the fuel line. Warning lights blinked on the dash. Systems straining, hydraulics stiffening. The plow wasn't built to idle in this kind of cold forever. The road curved sharply ahead, the drop-off hidden behind blowing snow. I slowed just enough to make the turn. That was my mistake. The moment my speed dropped below 30, the radio went silent, not crackling, dead. No static. No hiss, like something had closed its mouth. I felt it then, not on the road, not in the mirrors, behind my eyes. That pressure you feel when someone stands too close to your back. Close enough that turning around would put your face in their chest. My breath fogged the windshield faster than the defroster could clear it. I realized I was breathing too hard, too fast, burning heat I didn't have to spare. A shadow slid into my headlights, not fast, not slow, measured. It stepped onto the road and stood there, just far enough ahead that stopping felt safer than swerving. I could see details now. Skin stretched tight and grey, pulled over bone like it didn't belong there. Its head sat too low between its shoulders, neck bent forward, like it had learned to walk by watching broken people. Its mouth opened, not wide, just enough. The sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was breathing, labored, wet, familiar. It sounded like someone who had been walking for days and finally couldn't anymore. My foot hovered over the brake. I knew the stories. Hypothermia victims hallucinate. They hear voices. They see people who aren't there. But hallucinations don't leave footprints that turn around to face you. The thing tilted its head. Behind it, more shapes became visible at the edge of the light, not moving, just standing waiting. That's when I understood the pattern. It doesn't drag you away. It makes the road unbearable. Then it waits for you to choose rest. Because rest is when your body stops fighting and starts listening. I didn't brake. I didn't accelerate either. The truck crawled forward, engine whining in protest, like it knew something I didn't want to accept. The thing in the road stepped aside at the last second, not startled, not rushed, just enough to let me pass. As I rolled by, it turned its head. Its eyes reflected the headlights wrong. Not red, not white, just empty, like two holes punched through the night. The shapes behind it stayed where they were. Markers, warnings, or maybe reminders of people who'd already made the wrong choice. A half-mile later, the engine finally gave out. No dramatic explosion, no grinding failure. Just a soft, final cough and then silence. The kind of silence that feels deliberate. I sat there gripping the wheel, listening to my own breathing, afraid that if I moved too much, it would hear me somehow. Snow began piling up against the doors almost immediately. I grabbed my jacket, my gloves, my emergency pack. Training kicked in. Stay with the vehicle. Conserve heat. Signal when possible. Every rule I'd ever learned told me to stay put. The radio crackled once. Then my voice came through again, closer than before. "You don't want to sit still," it said. "That's how people freeze." I looked in the mirror. Footprints appeared behind the truck, not leading away, leading toward it. I opened the door. The cold hit like a slap, stealing my breath instantly. Wind screamed past my ears, carrying something else with it, a smell like old blood and wet fur. I stepped out. The moment my boots hit the snow, the pressure eased slightly, like I'd made the right move. That scared me more than the thing in the road ever had. I shut the door behind me and started walking. Not toward the trees, not away from the road, along it. The footprints kept their distance now, always just far enough back that I could pretend they weren't following me. But every time I slowed, the breathing got louder, so I kept moving. Because somewhere deep down, beneath the fear and the cold and the screaming wind, I understood the truth. The Wendigo doesn't need to touch you. It just needs to make sure you never stop. Walking in a blizzard feels like moving through a living thing. The wind presses from every side, forcing its way into your clothes, your mouth, your thoughts. Snow needles your face until pain goes numb, then disappears entirely. I lost track of time almost immediately. Minutes stretched, hours collapsed. The road markers passed in silence. Each one felt like an accusation. My legs began to shake before I felt tired. Muscles misfiring, balance going soft. I focused on the rhythm of my steps, because the moment I thought about stopping, the breathing behind me grew closer. Not faster, closer. I glanced over my shoulder once. That was another mistake. It was walking now, not hurried, not slow. Its stride was wrong, too smooth, too long. Each step landed exactly where it needed to, like the road itself was carrying it forward. Its arms hung loose, fingers twitching occasionally, as if remembering how to grab something. Its mouth moved when it breathed, shaping words it didn't say. I turned forward again, and nearly ran into someone standing in the road. A man, bent over, hands on his knees, gasping. He wore a parka like mine, same reflective stripes, same maintenance patch on the sleeve. I knew that jacket. I knew that man. "Hey," he wheezed. "I can't feel my feet." Every instinct screamed at me to help him, to grab his arm, to get him moving. That's how you save people out here. But his boots left no tracks, and behind him the Wendigo stopped, watching, waiting. It wanted to see what I would do. I stepped past the man without touching him. The sound he made when I did wasn't human. It was disappointment. The shape of him collapsed inward, folding like wet paper, limbs stretching and rearranging as bones slid under skin. The jacket split down the back, and something taller, thinner, more honest, rose out of it. The Wendigo inhaled deeply, enjoying the moment. Then it let me walk again. My legs burned, my lungs screamed. I stumbled more than once, catching myself at the last second because every fall felt final. And still, it didn't rush, because it didn't have to. It knew the road would end. And when it did, there would be nowhere left to walk. The road didn't end all at once. It thinned. The plowed surface gave way to packed snow, then to uneven drifts where the asphalt disappeared entirely. My boots began to sink deeper with every step, each lift stealing more strength than the last. That's when the wind died. Not eased, died. The sudden quiet was worse than the storm. No howl, no hiss, just the sound of my breathing and the slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps behind me. I stopped, not because I chose to, because my legs locked. The Wendigo didn't close the distance. It never does that right away. It circled instead, just outside my peripheral vision, moving in wide arcs that carved long, looping tracks into the snow. I could feel it studying the way I swayed, the tremor in my hands, the shallow panic creeping into my chest. "You can rest now," it whispered. Not my voice this time. Not anyone's. The sound scraped its way straight into my head, bypassing my ears completely. My knees buckled, and I caught myself on one hand, glove instantly stiffening with ice. That's when I saw them, the others, figures half buried along the tree line, some standing, some kneeling, some frozen mid-step, faces locked in expressions of confusion or relief. All of them facing the road, like they'd been waiting to be told where to go next. None of them had eyes anymore. The Wendigo moved closer. I could smell it now. Cold rot, old blood, wet fur, baked into skin that had been stretched too far. Its antlers loomed overhead, tangled with scraps of fabric, hair, things I didn't want to identify. It crouched in front of me, lowered itself to my level. "You did well," it said. "You kept moving." Its hand touched my shoulder. Not hard, not gentle, claiming. My vision tunneled. The cold faded. Hunger rose up instead, sharp and sudden, screaming for warmth, for rest, for an end. I almost gave it what it wanted. Then I saw something through the trees. A dim orange glow, a maintenance flare, old, forgotten, burning low near a turnout that shouldn't still exist. The Wendigo followed my gaze. For the first time, it hesitated, and in that hesitation I understood the last rule. It can't make you stop. It can only make stopping feel inevitable. I screamed, not in fear but in defiance, and forced myself upright, tearing free from its grip. Pain exploded through my legs as I staggered toward the light. Behind me, the Wendigo screamed too. Not patient this time, not calm, angry, because I was still moving. I don't remember how long it took to reach the flare. Time stopped behaving like a straight line somewhere back on the road. All I know is that every step felt borrowed, like my legs were running on something they hadn't earned. The light flickered weakly, half buried in snow, burning down to its last angry inch. A turnout emerged around it, cracked asphalt, bent guardrail, a place that looked forgotten by maps and maintenance schedules alike. I crossed into it and collapsed, not fully, just enough to kneel. Behind me, the Wendigo stopped at the edge of the light. It didn't step closer. The flare hissed and spat, throwing shadows that made its shape fracture and bend, too tall, too thin, antlers cutting into the dark sky like black lightning. Its mouth opened, and this time the sound that came out wasn't breath. It was frustration. Not because it had lost, because it hadn't finished. The flare burned out. Darkness rushed in, but not completely. Headlights punched through the snow from the far end of the turnout. A rescue truck. Late. Too late for most. The Wendigo retreated without haste, stepping backward into the storm, its footprints erasing themselves as it went. Before it vanished, it tilted its head toward me. Not in anger, in recognition, like it was memorizing my shape. They found me hypothermic, half delirious, barely conscious. I told them what I could: road, storm, engine failure. Walking to stay alive, they nodded. Wrote it down. Closed the file. The highway still opens every winter. Accidents still happen. People still vanish during whiteouts. Found days later standing upright, just off the road, like they'd paused mid-step to listen. I don't work night shifts anymore. I don't drive that stretch when storms roll in. And if I ever feel the urge to stop walking in the cold, to rest, just for a second, I don't, because I know the truth now. The Wendigo doesn't need to drag you into the forest. It just waits until you decide the road isn't worth it. And when you stop, it keeps what's left moving.